So I just wanted to make a quick point. I say quick, but I'm going to be rambling forever because that's what I do. But I think it's something that's come up recently and actually really important to address. I feel like people's perception of what recovery is in regards to an eating disorder, that as soon as you recover, all of those kind of thoughts and feelings go away, and you just sort of get on with life. And for some that may be the case, but personally that is something that I've said before, that I know that I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life. It's just how I manage it, which is fine to the extent of how I deal with it. But recently I've had a few kind of wobbles, and I guess I'm just here to say that it's okay to have that, as long as you recognise it and I guess correct it so it doesn't formulate into a bigger problem. But I definitely have had a few wobbles recently, and the pandemic hasn't been ideal for that, but just even in general, regardless of the pandemic or not, it is something so-called kind of mini relapses or thought processes, and days can be harder than others, and it's okay, but I just sort of wanted to sort of show or tell you that my kind of side of things that happened recently. I wasn't really expecting it on that day, but it just kind of happened, I guess. But I'd been to the gym, everything was fine, normal routine, whatever, and then before I went to work I picked up this Kind bar as a snack before I went, and then it just suddenly hit me after I'd eaten it, good, don't know my English. I'm gonna go with the word consumed because I've just second guessed myself too many times now. So pretty much as soon after I consumed it, I just had these overwhelming thoughts of, why did I have that? I got quite upset about it. It did stress me out a little bit, just because I sort of was like, well, I don't need that. Bearing in mind I hadn't really eaten anyway all day, but even the fact that I'm justifying having it, whereas a lot of people would just sort of not even think about it and get on with their day, and it's just like nothing that they forget within minutes. But obviously for someone who's recovering from an eating disorder, or who's previously experienced an eating disorder, the mindset that plays is quite prominent. It's relatable in the sense of, it almost feels like you've consumed the world, and you didn't deserve to have it. That was sort of my first initial thought. I was like, well, why on earth am I having this? And like I said, bearing in mind I hadn't eaten really that much all day, which hasn't been ideal, and which probably is affecting my brain function. So it was just quite an overwhelming feeling, and I just thought, I can't go burn this off. That was my immediate thing, like, why I had this, it's going to stay in my body and I didn't need it. And that thought process was everything that I used to feel in the midst of my eating disorder, and I was kind of getting upset about it and worried, and I was like, why am I feeling this way? And it just sort of brought me back to that place. But the good thing is, on that day, is that I didn't actually have time to burn it off. I had to go straight to work. Literally, it was in 5 minutes before work. So that in a way saved the day a bit, because it wasn't like I could go out and just full on power exercise to burn it off or punish myself. I had to go to work and sort of let that mindset settle. And it was funny because it was such an overwhelming feeling that I hadn't had in a very long time. And I don't know whether it's just brewing because of added stresses recently or anything like that, I don't know. But it was a random day that it happened, and it just came to a head, I guess. But I think it's just kind of emphasising the point of, these days do happen, and it's okay for these days to happen, but what's not okay is that we kind of feed into that, or we allow it to sort of overconsume us and kind of hinder everything going forward. So the next day I was like, I'm getting back on this, I don't need to be thinking that way, and I just carried on as I had been previously, and I had a better day. But yeah, I think you can't plan for these things or when they're going to happen. You know, it could be that you've been going super well for a long period of time, and then you just have a bad day and you feel like all of that goodness that you've done is being undone, and that's not the case. So I don't want you to think of it like that, because already, I mean, even on that day I was like, well, I'm pretty much failing now, and this is where my mindset is at, and there's sort of like no coming back from that. Like, I can either dwell in that moment and let that influence everything going forward, or I can have this bad day and say, right, I'm having a bit of a bad day, don't know why it's happening, but I'm going to sleep on it, get up tomorrow and get back into the swing of things, no matter how hard it is. And it's definitely easier now in recovery than it was when I was kind of more severely ill. So being both underweight and malnourished, of course, and mentally not that great. In a sense, it's easier, but it's harder too. But it's growth, and it's just making sure that you're aware of that. And like I said, not feeding into that going forward, but just make sure that you're recognizing that behavior and sort of correcting yourself, because like I said, long term, that can become a greater issue that you don't want to be reverting back to. Now, there may be like multiple interlinking factors that have sort of made this happen. It could be that I haven't been nourishing my body as well as I should be, just from with the gyms reopening as well, having that sort of greater expenditure to a degree, just general overall mental well-being, stresses, loads of multiple factors that could influence this, but I can't obviously necessarily pinpoint one. But yeah, just really important to sort of reiterate that these days can happen, and recovery isn't just like a linear thing. So the longer you are in recovery, the better you are, essentially. If that makes some sort of sense. It's just about checking those times when this happens. And like I said, I got back on the bandwagon the next day, and everything was a lot better. So kind of cut yourself some slack in that respect, but don't feed into it too much. Don't ignore it, because it's not going to go away. So for me, that was a very bad day, but it's not the be all end all. And it's something that I am really trying hard to work at, especially with all the other goings-ons and things. So cut yourself a break, but I just want to be an example that these days do happen, and it's okay that they happen. Like I've said like 100 million times in this sentence because I waffle. And yeah, so just get back on the bandwagon and you'll have a better day.